I hate to say it, but there are some schools that are not built for the kids. There are some schools that are built for adults, and they need to humble themselves enough to say, I'm sorry, but we've got to restructure some of the things that we do around the needs of kids, not around the needs of adults.
No time, no tools, big expectations. How do you transform school culture without derailing the train? Answer: little wins that bring big changes. The flywheel effect. Harnessing the power of momentum to create a school culture that celebrates change and drives itself.
Hello and welcome. My name is Jordan Pruitt. I'm here with my co-host Dana Murphy on The Flywheel Effect. Our show exists to share the stories of little wins that can have a big impact on your school's culture. And today we are joined by Mr. Gary Davison. He is the principal of Lambert High School in Suwannee, Georgia. Gary, you want to introduce yourself a little bit before we get started?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Jordan. Yes, my name is Gary Davison. I'm principal of Lambert High School. This is my 33rd year in education. I have been a principal now for 22 years. I opened Lambert High School in 2009. Prior to that, I was principal of a neighboring high school. And prior to that, I was principal of the elementary that feeds into my high school now. So I've been in this little corner of the world for, a good 20 years, 20 plus years, and just love what I do and have a great community that we work with, fantastic kids, and thrilled to death. Love our staff, and the Longhorns are here to stay. So we're very thrilled.
So I didn't realize when we talked before that you actually opened that school. I got to work in a new school in Lexington when it opened. That's a really unique experience that everybody doesn't really get to be a part of. But so when you opened it, so you guys are the Longhorns. I'm curious about this part because I know my principal, he got to pick mascots and colors and stuff, and that was a big deal. Did you get to do all that stuff?
That's a great question. Yes, to a degree. When we were opening the school, you have the trim on the windows and the doors and all those things. That's a set color. So there were two things I could not change or arrange on my own. One was the address. We knew what the address was going to be, and that one of the colors had to be crimson. Outside of that, I had the ability to work with anything, and it was about a 2-year process to put everything together. Put together a committee of kids and future staff and the community members and things. And it was a lot of fun, but we settled on the Longhorns. There was only one other Longhorn in the state of Georgia at the time. And so we wanted the alliteration of Lambert Longhorns. And then we wanted to be a little bit different. Around us, it seems like everyone is a cat. So we wanted to be something different. And so it was a lot of fun to go through the process. And it was neat to see the kids that were very small in elementary school at the time who were a part of the committee actually go through, play for the team, and then graduate from the school and have a hand in on all those pieces. So it was really interesting and exciting to see.
That's very cool. So it really was like a community effort. For the folks listening, if you ever get a chance to be a part of a new school that opens, do it. It's going to be one of the hardest years you've ever done, but it's really rewarding. It's really cool. I think you can kind of take for granted all the things. If you've been like in a school that's been established for a while, all the little things you got to decide. Like all the documents got to be new, all the things got to be new. So even if you're teaching at one of those schools, there's a lot to it. Before we get into a lot of, we were going to talk a little bit of behavior stuff and stuff like that, but I came across Gary. He has his own podcast as well, so he's a pro at this. He has the Lodge of Leaders podcast, and which he does a principal leadership program on there, which is really cool. I highly suggest it, and we'll put links on the end of this to that, Gary. But before you were a leader in education, before you were a principal and opening your own school and all that, what was your very first job in education?
My very first job in education, I was a paraprofessional at a school system in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a very, very small school system, but it's in a very exclusive, nice neighborhood. And I was a paraprofessional there for specifically 2 children. One child had behavior disorders, so I was kind of his partner in crime there half the day. And the other child I was there had physical disabilities. So I would help him get around the building. So I would split time between two different kids throughout the year. And it was really a great experience. And, it's really interesting now. I'll hire someone and tell them, this was my journey. I started, my first year as a paraprofessional in a building, I made zero money. I mean, it was nothing at all. And it was the best experience I ever could have had. I was surrounded by great teachers, a terrific community. And it was a great chance for me to learn and really soak up what all of these great teachers were doing. And my reward was definitely not a paycheck, but it was definitely getting the experiences. I still remember many of the opportunities and things that we went through when I was there.
Yeah, I love asking that question. Everybody comes on, so I change questions for everyone. So every show is a little different, but I always have that one in there some way, just because I think that's kind of cool. Because you've been a principal and a school leader for 20 some years. That folks don't see that, with the time when you were a parapro just starting and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of cool. But tell us a little bit about your school. And we talked a little bit about behavior management and student support when we talked over email a few days ago. Your school is quite large. Tell us a little bit about your school and then how you guys go about it.
Okay, excellent. We're Lambert High School. We're about 30 miles outside of Atlanta in Georgia. And we're in a nice suburb. We have several gated neighborhoods. We do not have any retail, so it's pretty much just a neighborhood community. We currently have right at 3,000 students, so we're a quite large school. We're actually larger than 53 school systems in the state of Georgia, so we're a pretty big school. It's a great community, a great school to be at. My staff, of course, being the only principal that's been there, I had the chance to hire them all. So I know them all very, very well. And my own daughter is a senior at the school this year. And so that's quite exciting to be able to see her all the way through her high school experience. But it's a great school. We are known for all three big areas. Athletically, we've done very, very well. In 14 years, we've won 53 state championships, 6 national championships, and in a variety of different sports. So we've done well there. Academically, we're in the top 2-3 in the state. We're in the top 200 nationally. And then in the arts, our fine arts, our band and percussion and everyone else, they're just doing great. So we're very, very blessed with some great kids, terrific community support, and just an outstanding staff. So it's really a cool opportunity.
I mean, you just gave some examples there of how you achieved this, right? But those are some amazing accomplishments. Like, what's the secret for someone listening?
That's a great question, Anna. I think that previously I was at a high school that was very close in the area, and we were not very successful at a lot of things. And I think that it was setting a new tone, setting a level of expectation. And then I really honestly do believe that with having the community and the kids together establish the norms of the school, they literally have a hand in on everything we do. And I really think that has a carryover to the culture of the building. It's everything we do at school is built around the idea of student support. So it's 110% set up for the kids. It's with their involvement and their the work together. And I really think that just really plays with everyone wanting to do a great job all the time. It's interesting. I had a young man about 4 or 5 years ago come up to me in the hall one day, and his head was down, and I asked him, I said, what's wrong, Taylor? Are you okay? What's happening today? And he said, I am really sorry that we haven't been able to win a ring for the school, a championship ring. And I go, y'all are great. What are you talking about? Y'all have done a tremendous job. And it's the programs all wanting to one up each other and just do a little bit better than everyone else. And that's a really neat thing. Right now, there's a lot of stress out there, and there's a lot of real difficulties for kids in other ways. But this, having an outlet at school in an extracurricular or something else that you want to really excel at, has been a great thing. And our kids have done just a tremendous job with it. And I just can't say enough about them.
So that the whole idea of like the kids being involved and like the norms and those things that creates ownership, and ownership creates effort and pride, which is a big deal in all those things. I was at a pretty big school for Kentucky. We don't really have any schools quite that large in Kentucky, but a large school. And one thing I noticed was, and we were pretty successful. But we're still pretty new, but at all the athletic programs and the arts and all those things. The cool thing about a big campus, particularly when all the programs are fairly top notch and working hard, is being there in the evenings, in the fall and the spring when like so many things happening at once. It's a cool environment because you'll have a softball game, a baseball game, a track meet, and they'll up the hill there's the choirs performing, all sorts of stuff's happening. It's at big campuses can be really cool like that, particularly when everyone has a high standard of excellence.
Absolutely. It's a really fun time. Fall, of course, is a great time. Football and cheerleading and all the things kicking off at that time. We do some things a little bit different. Our homecoming, we don't do a traditional homecoming like most schools have a dance or something built after the game or whatever. We do an outdoor concert. We call it Lalo Fest. And it's an outdoor thing. We have food trucks come up. We have a DJ and lights and the whole thing. And we had ours 2 weeks ago, and we had 2,100 kids at the homecoming event. And it's outside. It's kids can wear shorts and they can dress up a little bit if they want to, but it's low key as far as keeping some of the costs and things down. But boy, is it just a lot of fun. It's a great time to be with the kids and just have conversations with them and get to know them better. And it's a really cool thing. So, events like that in the fall are great. Wintertime, obviously, with basketball or wrestling, and our theater program is in full gear at that time. So it's really neat to bounce between all the different events going on. So I'll do what I call drive-bys, where I go by the different events every night, and I'll just stop by softball for a little bit. Then I'll jump out of there and go to volleyball for a little bit, maybe go by the band practice and, things like that. But once you hit spring for us, spring is where it's, to say it's busy is a vast understatement. For people in my job, usually it's a family commitment to be married to a principal or have, be the child of a principal. And so in May, when we're in playoff season and everything else is going on, I really don't make it home very many evenings after work. It might be three nights in the month of May I have off. Everything else is going on, parent nights and all these things. And it's really, really busy. But boy, is it fun. It's really a great time, and the staff is there and the kids are there. So it's just a neat environment. So I always warn people that want to get into leadership. It's not just the job that you have to, it's all the other things that are a part of it. And that's really something special, and that makes it a really neat career to have.
So one of I write a lot about school culture, and we obviously we have a podcast about school culture. One of the indicators I like to say is it's a community within a community, and like what you just described, that's exactly what I mean by that. Like everyone just kind of there. That's what they do. They go to those events and they're part of that community. They support each other and they help each other out. That's a big deal.
Yeah, the real challenge for us along that same line is to take a school of 3,000 kids and make it feel small. And so the real challenge for that, and we've done it through kids in their programs. So we have a really strong push to make sure every kid is a part of something. It doesn't all have to be an extracurricular. It can be a club. It can be something. But when you do that, then the kids feel like the entire school is their organization. So we have a HOSA program, a healthcare program, and it has about 600 kids in it. And so those kids think that's the whole school. To them, they spend all their time together, they study together, they do all the other things. So we've just taken a school of 3,000 down to a feel of about 600, and they know all the other kids. The band is the same way, 300 kids in the band. And, so the band kids feel like that's the entire school. And we like it that way because then it takes away the stressors of a big school, but it gives them all the benefits of a big school. And so that has really helped a lot of kids with anxiety and other things. It's okay to be in a big school, but it doesn't feel like it. You don't feel like you're a number anymore, which is nice.
Well, and that actually leads me to my next question is, you mentioned anxiety and a lot of the challenges I think students across the country and world, frankly, are facing right now. What does behavior management look like within your school? How have you guys adapted to cope with some of those challenges that have become, I guess I would say, more prevalent lately?
That's a great question. And I think, the premise when we started the school, go back to how we began, having kids involved in on it, the community involved in on it. We started with a premise that's been in place since day one, and it's everyone is good. And everyone starts from that. The bar is everyone's great, and we start there. Most kids walk into a high school, they used to go to malls, they don't go to malls anymore, but um, most people think teenagers are trouble or there's something wrong, and teenagers sense that when they go into a school, and the adults in the building automatically feel like, okay, these kids are going to do something wrong. They're going to do things that are wrong. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we felt like going the other direction with it, that we would then set up the premise being that our kids are great. And what we found is a lot of our kids rise to that level. So that takes away a lot of the low level management that has to be there. Of course, we have to attend to that, and that's something that we do constantly. But the other part of that goes hand in hand with that is we're highly visible and we know the kids' names. I send home a yearbook with each of my administrators over the summer, and their homework is to read the yearbook. I study the yearbook every year, and I like to know who kids are. I'm not great with names. I do my very, very best, but I know something about the kids. So a young man comes up. We talk about the St. Louis Cardinals every day. And he's a freshman coming into our school and was very, very nervous. So I tried to find a way to get to know him. He was wearing a Cardinal shirt. I was a Cardinal fan for many years. So I had a chance to just talk to him and say, hey, are you a Cardinal fan or is that just a shirt? He told me he's a fan. So every single day now, we catch each other up on how the Cardinals did last night. And then I've learned a little bit more about them as time goes on. So we like to manage proactively rather than reactively. Of course, we do when things happen. And of course, we deal with all of those situations. But we feel like if we do it so much more on the front end and put a lot of effort there, we get so much more on the back end. We get higher engagement. Our attendance is much better. We're able to have hard conversations with kids in a much more open environment that way. So it really lends itself to really helping in that way. And that sets up our student support structures, which our entire school is built around our student support. So it really works hand in hand.
The all that work on the front end is so worth it. Studying the yearbook, knowing the names, and like knowing a little thing about everyone, even if it's just the St. Louis Cardinals or the Reds or whatever. If whoever knowing something about them helps. One of my a weird go to I had was tennis shoes. I got to where I could pick out all the different basketball shoes. Like I could pick out those are the Chris Pauls, those are the Kyries. And I could talk. It's an in. I can talk to him about that. So
there you go. Anything you can do to have that engagement, that interaction, whatever it is, that's great.
So That being said, let's talk big picture outside of your school. What's the most pressing concern for educators and education?
Um, you know, I've become more concerned about where kids are going right now with the level of expectations on them. And what I mean by that is I'm seeing kids being worn down by the expectation to be perfect every single day, to be an adult before they're ready to be an adult. Um, and I hate to say this, but I'm finding that a lot of kids have ramifications of parents trying to be their kids' friends. And that what I see every day is my kids at school, they need a parent. And unfortunately, many of them have buddies instead of parents. And I really see the ramifications of that, where that keeps them, not being able to be a kid, not being able to have just that time to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes and have someone at home to guide you with that, rather than someone who will just take care of everything for you, rather than let you skin your knee rather than having a major catastrophe. You've got to learn how to overcome and develop some grit and develop some tenacity and things like that. But unfortunately, right now, I see too many parents being buddies of their kids, and the ramifications I see are kids that once they're out of the house, maybe they're at college on their own or they're on their own, they have no idea how to exist. And that's why so many of them are coming home again, because they have not been taught at all how to be self sufficient. And most of these kids are academically brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant, but can't handle the most simple life skill. And that's where I see a very big thing happening. And a lot of kids are getting very stressed over that. The anxiety level is growing. And I see a lot of kids in that ballpark right now.
So, what do you think brought about that shift? I've seen some of that as well. When do you think that came about, and what can we do about it?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when a lot of the things that are happening today weren't necessarily there, and they were proposed ideas. And so I'm old enough to have seen pendulums swing back and forth a couple of times, and it's very, very interesting to see how some of these things are occurring. But I really do believe that what used to be a stool with three legs with the student, the parent, and the school is really now a two-legged stool trying to stand up. It's either the school and the student, or it's the parent and the kid. And so it's those three have to be in alignment together. I'm not going to put it all on parents. I think that I talk to educators all the time that need to do a better job of getting to know who their kids are at school. And I hate to say it, but there are some schools that are not built for the kids. There are some schools that are built for adults, and they need to humble themselves enough to say, I'm sorry, but we've got to restructure some of the things that we do around the needs of kids, not around the needs of adults. So I think that's one aspect of it. I've done a lot of parent conversations. I work with Tim Elmore here, Tim Elmore, the author for Generation Z and many of the other things. And I've done a lot of parent nights with him, and it's kids routinely ask me to say certain things to their parents when I talk to their parents at night. And the thing I hear all the time from students is, please let me fail. Please, I won't fail the class, but let me fail a test. Let me figure out how to do better at something, rather than you calling the teacher and getting mad at the teacher. um, Let me figure this out. Let me go and talk to the teacher. Let me try and work through this. And kids want to be able to do that. They want to be in control of their own destiny, and they want to be in control of how they can improve things. But unfortunately, I think some parents don't allow that to happen. They have the best of intentions, of course, but I think that sometimes they're just going about it the wrong way. And I think sometimes there are some schools that just don't get it right. And there are some schools that just don't like parents either. And they don't want parents to have any kind of interaction with them. So I think it's a holistic problem. I think we all need to come to the realization that none of us are at the center. The student is at the center. And when we get back to that, I think that's going to really help a lot of things.
So we had another guest on. He's a superintendent from Chicago, Nick Poliak, and he had a quote very similar to what you said. And he said, I don't want to mess up his quote, but it was along the lines of stop building schools out of brick and mortar and stop building them out of mirrors so our kids could see themselves in them. That was like the metaphor there. That's kind of what you were hitting at there. That I think that rings very true. And I think there's a lot of places where maybe the kids were the first thought, and sometimes, you know what I mean? One of the things we talked about, and this shows up a lot on your show. So you've had a ton of success developing school leaders. What can you tell us about preparing aspiring leaders? Because I'm sure you have a lot that come to you, or you recognize some. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. Yes, I had a little bit of success with that. I have to go back to my first superintendent, Miss Paula Galt. I was a brand new principal. I was so wet behind the ears. I was so eager, and I had a meeting with her, and so she said to bring in whatever plans I wanted to put together, and I had all of these complex, plans I wanted to do, and all of the things. And she laughed and she put it to the side and she said, Gary, that's so cute, but I want you to remember one thing. If you develop leaders in your school will be top notch. If you develop leaders out of everyone in your building, they will be leaders and they will pursue what's right for kids. And so I use that premise to start developing leaders. And so to date, I have 22 people that have gone through my admin team that are now either principals, superintendents, deputy superintendents, or beyond. And so I've worked through the development of leadership and how to develop aspiring leaders. And I've done that for quite a long time. But I look for certain things in them, and then so I believe it was last year, I hired 2 new assistant principals, and so I had probably 250 candidates. I narrow it down. I have kind of a criteria of what I look for, a skill set for an aspiring leader, someone that can really get to the next level. And then I have a pretty rigorous selection process. So my interview is pretty rigorous. But again, it's student centered. I have kids at the heart of it. I have a quote unquote angry parent session. Then I have a student session where they take them on a tour, but then I want the candidate, and I don't prompt them, but I want to see what the candidate wants to find out about the kids. So the kids take them around, but the point is not for the candidate to see the school, because they'll see the school. The point is to see what kind of interaction they have with kids. Is it surface level? Is it awkward? And then I debrief with the kids afterwards, and I ask them, is this a leader? Is this someone who is a leader-like person that could be in Lambert High School or not? And our kids have a high bar of what they want around them. And I take their feedback in. And so it's fully in the mix when I go to assess all the candidates. I do an email scenario where we have 3 emails, hypothetical emails that come in, and then I ask them to answer those. Like I said, I have an angry parent session where I have a parent that's set up to be a meeting with them and see how they act. I have a leadership team scenario where they come in and they're with me in a leadership team meeting, and then I step out and I see how they can do leading colleagues. And then I ask my colleagues, do you trust this person? Is this someone who you feel like has support for you? Do you think they would be able to lead you in your department, in PL, and some other things? So I go through that whole scenario, and then I narrow it down, and then I bring in just the last 2 or 3 for in-depth conversation with me, and then see what is their work ethic? What is their, are they big thinkers? Are they just people who do just tasks and want to sit in a cubicle all day? Or, I really try and dig in a little bit to see what I can learn about them. And then I do my background checking on all of them. So that's just the selection process. And so we get it narrowed down and then make the offer and go with it from there. But the big part is I do monthly leadership development sessions with everyone on my team. And so I bring them in one at a time, once a month, and I spend at least an hour with them just talking about their leadership skill set. Not the discipline they just did, not the observation of a teacher they just had. All that's important. But I want to grow their leadership. So I've got to really sit down with them and not only do some teaching, but I've got to do some feedback with them. I've got to really talk them through a lot of things that they're working on, their skill sets. What do they need to grow in? And I have a lot of very frank conversations with them. But we've built the trust. We've built the relationship to be able to do that. And it's been really successful. Again, 22 people have gone on to be principals or higher. And so it's really, really worked. And again, I always have ways I can fix it. But what I've learned is the key to everything is feedback. Doesn't matter what kind of experiences you've had. Can you take feedback? Can you give feedback? And do you implement feedback? And if you do those things, you can be a very successful leader.
The first thing, I love that your superintendent set you down. You had all these great plans, and she said, "That's cute." That's excellent.
Oh yeah, she did. It's in a very Southern way. Yes, very much.
Yeah. The scenarios you're putting your potential APs and your potential deans and all the folks on your team through, that's what they're going to have to do. I think we don't do that enough when we like in education, just in general. Like a lot of times it's way too much. Sit down. Here's the 10 questions we're going to ask you. Like, cause that's just not what the job is. And like what you're doing gets at the heart of, can they do the job, which is a big deal.
Absolutely. Well, I remember, I'm old enough to remember back in the day when I got my certification for principalship in Missouri, when I finished, it became just a paper pencil test. But prior to that, you had to go to what's called Principals Academy. And the Principals Academy was where you would go for a weekend and you would go into a school and you would play principal at a desk. And then these superintendents at the back of the room would assess you and they would write down everything you're doing right, you're doing wrong. They'd give you suggestions. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I truly always knew that this was the way to really teach someone, was to give them that really descriptive, objective feedback. And if you don't have that, to expect someone to grow without giving them really good feedback, that's malpractice. If you really look at it, it's not the best practice. And so I've always liked that scenario. So when I had a chance to implement it in selecting leaders, I found something that worked. And then it, of course, included kids. So I've just loved doing that.
That was, two things. One, the students who were given the tour, I was a part of an interview at a school where they did that. I thought that was a great idea. I got real good feedback on that part of it. I was always good at talking to kids. I was way too young to be a principal at that school, but that was really neat, and I thought it was a great idea. I couldn't figure out why everybody doesn't do that, so I'm glad to see you're implementing that. The other thing, and it was something that sounds similar to what you were talking about. I came from a county that was really very leadership focused, and they ran a in-house aspiring leaders program, and they would pick 15 to 20 folks every year, and then they would have these monthly sessions, and you'd go shadow principals in other buildings. I got to do that. I thought that was really, really key, and that's just something I don't think happens everywhere. And like that's seeing the different scenarios they go through during the day is a big deal. You mentioned your criteria. What are the qualities you're looking for?
That's a good question. One of the things I think it's very important for me, especially in our role today, is to be a big thinker. I need someone who is not going to be stuck in a box. And a lot of people say that, but then other people think, what do they mean by that? What does that really mean? we're governed by policy, we're governed by practices. There are some things in our world that are very black and white, and we have to follow certain policies. But a leader in a big school like this, 95% of what we deal with is the gray in the middle. And I need someone who can really work and be comfortable and live in that gray. And so I find that those are big thinkers typically, and they usually have that ability to not only focus on what they're doing at the time, but also think about how it has implications on other parts of the building, other parts of the organization. How does this decision affect culture and other things like that? So I really look for thinkers like that. Obviously, I want somebody who's going to be smart. I need somebody that can think on their feet. When they're in a teacher's classroom or in a department meeting or something, and the department or something, they're looking to this person for leadership. They're looking to them for guidance. I need someone who can be smart and who can think through problems and things like that. Obviously, work ethic, with as many hours as we work, and the various different things that we do. Administrators, they really have to be hardworking, dedicated. But for me, the number one thing I look for is you got to be kid first. You've got to be a kid first leader. There are some leaders that are adult first, and more typically what I find is they're them first. They are very narcissistic in that way. But I look for those people that just light up when kids are around, that they want to be around kids. And those are the leaders that I want to have on my team. I've got to give a shout out to one of the very best leaders I've ever seen. He's our athletic director, Drew Ferrer. And he was a marketing teacher and a sports marketing teacher and a coach. And I asked him to be our athletic director when we opened Lambert. And I can tell you, he is just a kid magnet. He's like Mayor McCheese went around the kids all the time. And it's just awesome just to see the way they interact with him. And you want to talk about building a great culture. You've got to have a few of these people in your building that are just those kid magnets. And so on my team, I want those kinds of people that kids gravitate to, because when kids do, adults will. Great teachers will gravitate to them as well. And so I want several of them on my team. So that's one thing I look for. And I think the last thing that we need in today's world is they've got to be great communicators. They've got to be able to speak on their feet. They've got to be able to write effectively. And if they can't do that effectively, that's going to really limit their effectiveness. And so that's what I really look for.
The things that stand out there, that live in the gray part, that's real. That's the whole day is in the gray. Particularly if you do anything with school discipline, which that rubs people a lot of people wrong, because they think it should be just very like this happened, do this. But like if you're going to be kid first, like there's a whole lot of variables there for what happens. So you got to take them all into account, and you try to be fair and try to fix the issue. And that living in the gray is a big deal. The kid magnet part, that as soon as you said that, I thought of a few people I knew, and I hope there's some of those folks in every building. One of an interesting role we found for one of those folks, and she's amazing. But we tried transitioned her to the safe room, which is our in-school detention, with that kind of idea that because people gravitated towards her, we thought, the folks who were in school detention, they need somebody to gravitate to it. Like that could be a positive influence for them. And that was a very different way of looking at it. I thought it worked out really well. But probably a similar person that you're talking about. It's when you were describing him, I was thinking of her. The last thing I want to talk to you a little about is your show, the Lodge of Leaders show. How long have you been doing that? How is just kind of putting your thoughts into there impacted, how you go about your day?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. It's the Lodge of Leaders really came out of just a desire for me to work on having a bigger impact with growing leaders. My administrative team is a team of 10. And so we've got a decent sized team, and we're always feeding more people on at that point. So, it's 10, and then next year I'll add two more, and so two will leave and two will come in. So I have this amount of impact. I go back to my teaching roots. I was a teacher at heart, and I want to be able to teach leadership. And so I started this. I don't know how to do this very well. The technical part of it, I fumble my way through, to be very honest with you. But what I've done is I've kind of written a curriculum that I use for aspiring leaders over the years. And I've identified skills and a skill set that are employable by anyone. And I know that most people have the idea in their head that you have to have a certain charisma or you have to have a certain personality to be a leader. I don't think that's accurate. I think most anyone can be a leader in whatever setting they want to be a leader in. Not everyone's cut out to be a principal, and that's perfectly fine. But everyone can be a leader in whatever it is they want to do, whether they're on a content team at school, whether they're running a club, whether they're, just they want to be a better leader in their classroom. They want to be a better leader in their home with their friends, just all of these other things. So I've identified a list of skills. And so I do a couple of different things within the Lodge of Leaders. I have a series called the Principal Mentor Series, which is the set of skills that typically principals and aspiring principals need to employ at various times. So we go through each time we go through a different skill. Then I had early on, I had some just general writings that I've done before, either through the University of Georgia or some of the other settings that I've been in. Some of those writings that I've done. I do one with question and answer. So people will write in some questions and I'll answer some of those. Get some very interesting questions that way. And I'm thinking about starting another one. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to call it, but it's those things whenever I go somewhere and I'm around a bunch of non-educators, what they always ask me is, what's it like to be in a high school? What's that really like? So I was going to have something that might be the stories that come out of a high school. Some of the funny ones, we end up having a lot of different things. You can imagine a 3,000 student high school that's its own little community. There's always something happening and always something funny or something interesting or whatever that's happening. So it's all coming from an area of me wanting to teach. And the way that's impacted me at school is that I find myself being a better teacher around everyone that I interact with. It gives me that outlet to really then go back to my teaching skills. And I love being able to employ those again and really be that kind of person again, because it's too easy to be stuck in the principal's office behind the desk and all of the things like that. Or that's not the kind of principal I am. I don't have a secretary. I do all my own stuff. That my allotted secretary, she takes care of the whole school. She works in a different capacity. I'm not that normal principal guy. I don't have a desk. I have a table, a conference table I work at. I'm very much out and about. I walk around everywhere. Back in the 80s, they used to call it management by walking around. Right now, I call it leadership. You're going to build relationships. It's called leadership now. And so it's very much the epitome of the open door principle, that you can come in and out at any time. I have kids that drop in at any time. And I have to also tell you that we're a very dog friendly school. We have 8 therapy dogs at school. And so my own dog comes once in a while, and we have a trainer that we work with. And so it creates being able to be a teacher allows me to be open to other things that are going to meet the needs of various people in our building. Being that principal that's stuck behind a desk, it doesn't make you a big thinker. It doesn't get into the gray. It really doesn't get into those things that are going to help kids, particularly post-COVID. Anxiety's higher. The problems, it seems right now, are amplified all the time. So it takes a different kind of person to be a solution-oriented person for that. So I really wanted to get back to my teaching roots, and this was the best way to do it. I used to teach an online class. And that just didn't really fill my bucket. And so I looked for various ways to do it. And I love listening to podcasts. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll try one of these things and see how it goes. So I'm working on it. I'm really enjoying it, and just having a great time doing it.
Well, we thank you for coming on, Gary. A couple of things before you go. The therapy dog, those if they're not everywhere, I think they'll be everywhere pretty soon. My daughter's school just got a therapy dog, and I heard all about this therapy dog. it was a big hit, evidently. The second thing, if there's leaders out there and you're struggling and you're new and you're not real sure what to do, the managing by walking around thing, that's a good place as any to start. Like, just get moving and get out there and talk to people.
Absolutely.
Oh, and the last piece, because you talked about this as a curriculum for leadership, and it kind of had this idea. Have you applied any of this towards students? Like, do you have any kind of leadership program you're working with your kids?
We do. We have a movement called Whisper, and it's not the kids did not want it to be a club. They wanted it to be student led. And it's basically from had a couple of students several years ago, who were very concerned about cell phone use, and how it is causing kids to be more internal rather than external with each other. What they were finding was that kids, once the lesson was over, they would pull their phones out and no one would talk. It'd be so quiet in the classroom. And as opposed to them getting to know each other. And so the phones became a limiter for human interaction and having just conversation. And so what we've been doing is using some of these skills within the idea of Whisper. And so it's all student to student. They get together. They have a curriculum. They have nights where they work together, but they also have a chance to just go around and just do things together. Like one day we did name tag day, where every student gets a sticker name tag, and on that they write their dog name. If they were a dog, what would their name be? And so kids would walk around school and find someone who has a similar dog name or a different dog name, or it would cause conversation. It would cause interaction. We do all kinds of different things like that, that just become those settings for kids to have conversation. Too many kids will walk down the hall, pass each other. They are friends, quote unquote friends, on multiple social media platforms, but they won't know each other if they see each other. And we've seen that happen hundreds of times at school. So we wanted to employ something a little differently. So we've taken these skills. All of these skills in the Lodge of Leaders can be applied with kids. They're just great people skills to be able to interact with each other. And goodness knows our kids are going to be leaders, so they need these skills as well, too. So it's been a lot of fun to do. Again, the Whisper movement is, I think the website is maybe Whisper the Movement or the Whisper Movement, something like that. But it's really great. And it's just a lot of high energy, fun interaction with each other. And again, just causing conversation with each other.
Very cool. So we'll have the link to Whisper and the link to your show in the show notes on the description when we post. Other than that, is there anywhere that folks can find you?
I think mainly the Lodge of Leaders podcast. I'm also starting my own venture outside. It's called GreaterDevelopmentLLC.com. And again, it's in its infancy. But I'm looking at expanding in some way, trying to help principals, giving them coaching, aspiring leaders in any way, just getting good coaching, because that is one thing. I'm hearing a lot of research right now that we're obviously short of teachers. We're going to be short of leaders here very soon. And then you're getting a lot of inexperienced teachers becoming leaders, and they just don't have a lot of support yet. And so I'm looking to build some support structures for aspiring leaders and new leaders in helping them not only to be more effective, but I also want to help them feel very fulfilled in their job. Because that's one of the reasons why we're losing a lot of great teachers is the fulfillment's gone right now. they love the kids. It's the other stuff that's getting in the way. So I want to provide that for leaders. And so Greater Development LLC is where I'm working at through that to help leaders.
All right. Well, we'll have that in the show notes. Anna, do you got anything before we go?
No, that's it. Just thank you so much for your time. It's for anyone who's listening, it's 8:30 where you are. So I'm just really grateful for you taking the time this evening to talk with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great time.
The flywheel effect, harnessing the power of momentum to create a school culture that celebrates change and drives itself.